Chris Trumbull flipped from Jackson State to Delaware State on National Signing Day, and then there became a narrative that he lied about his initial offer from JSU. I'm here to set the record straight. That's far from the case. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can go to FanDuel.com, and if they put down a $5 winning bet, you'll get $150 back in bonus bets. Go to FanDuel.com to make every moment more. We'll wrap up today's episode with a look at Texas Southern's football schedule. I think it's well spaced with their bye weeks, but I think they backloaded their schedule. That could be detrimental. I really want to break down those last month of action, or those last 4 weeks of action, I should say. In segment 2, Texas Southern women's basketball versus Southern. This is a drastically different game than the first time these two teams faced off, because TSU has gone from being the hunter to being the hunted. But let's kick this thing off with the truth. Let's just get all the facts out there, because there is a narrative that Chris Trumbull is a liar. And after talking to people on his side, people on the Jackson State side, I have full information. And one thing I can say off rip, Chris Trumbull is not a liar. There may be some misinformation that is being put out, but it's not via Chris Trumbull. He did not mislead. He did not lie. I got information and I want to share it with you. I did an episode and I led off with this story that Delaware State had flipped a Jackson State commit, Chris Trumbull. He was an in-state guy, so he's staying in the state of Delaware. That was what I led off yesterday's episode with. It ended up being one of the most interesting stories that I've done in so long. And it's funny because I thought it was relatively regular. I just really wanted to come in and say, look at Deshaun Jackson and his ability to flip this recruit. Look at him putting a fence around the state of Delaware. Look at this guy, Chris Trumbull, and what he did with his over 100 tackles, over 20 tackles for a loss, double-digit sacks. I wanted to break down the quality of player they were getting, the fashion in which they got him. I thought that this was a really cool story, but I didn't think it was anything over the top. And then once I press publish, once 7 a.m. Central Time happened, that's when everything broke loose. That's when I have people in my comments saying that he lied, he made up the commitment, he never had an offer from Jackson State, everything under the sun. That's what they were saying. And you can only imagine being 18, however old he is, 17, 18, 19, somewhere in that range, and everybody telling you, a whole school's fan base telling you that you're a liar, putting out this image that you're a liar. And once people hopped in my comments, you can go back and you can see it on yesterday's episode. If you go to the video, I'm responding like, y'all saying he lying. I need proof. I will talk about it if he's lying. Fast forward, man, 15 or so minutes. My DMs is going crazy. I'm talking to people about what's going on. I'm getting more information on why they think he lied, what the actual truth of the matter is, and where the premise of Trumbull lying comes from is in a post on social media in which Jackson State's Coach O says he did not have a JSU offer. I did not know the kid, never talked to him. We wish him well. And I get it. Your associate head coach comes out and says this guy never had a Jackson State offer and I have no idea who he is. That should be taken as gospel. Like, I don't think you should sit there and question Coach O, but at the same time, I had to do some more. I had to do some more digging. I had to do some more research. I had to see what was going on here. And that's what I did. Here comes the confusion. Jackson State didn't have any scholarships left, but they did offer a preferred walk-on spot to Chris Trumbull. And I know what you may be thinking. So he lied. No, a preferred walk-on is still an offer. So the fact that Chris Trumbull got a preferred walk-on offer, that is not a lie. That is not a lie. And I know some people may feel like, well, that's different. Okay, I give you that. And I actually kind of agree. Being a preferred walk-on versus a scholarship kid is a drastic difference, but you can still say that you got an offer. You can still say that you committed to Jackson State. So that's what I mean when I say he did not lie. I don't think he misled either. I don't think he was trying to put on this front that he was a full ride player. I think he was saying, I'm going to Jackson State. And quite frankly, if things didn't happen with Delaware State, he would have went to Jackson State, which is why I can concretely say he didn't lie. What I thought was interesting in reading the comments, and it was one of the bigger reasons that I felt the need to really dig, is that somebody said he didn't have a Jackson State offer. He only had offers from Toledo. I said, FBS Toledo? Oh, my first thought, FBS Toledo. Because if I was a 17, 18, 19-year-old kid who had an FBS offer, I don't think that I'm making up a Jackson State offer for clout. I got that clout already. Let's just, because Trumbull told me, and it's the only thing I'm going to really say that anybody says specifically, Trumbull told me he always wanted to play for an HBCU. That was going to be Jackson State. It ended up being Delaware State. And yes, Delaware State came with a full ride. That is the information I got. I talked to people on every side of this story. I wanted to make sure I got the entire prism. I talked to people on Trumbull side. I talked to people on Jackson State side. And the stories line, the stories line up. When you talk to people on both sides and the stories line up, you can pretty certainly say that this is the truth. Because on the surface, these are two opposing sides. This is Jackson State. This is Trumbull. This is you lie. This is I'm telling the truth. But then when you get to people who are close to it and they tell you exactly what happened, he was reached out to by positional coaches. And that's how I can say that Trumbull is not lying, but neither is Coach O. The one thing he said that's wrong is he did have a Jackson State offer. There is an offer as a preferred walk-on. However, what it probably translates to is there's no scholarship on the table for this guy. There is no scholarship on the table, and it never reached my rank. And preferred walk-ons don't always meet the rank. The story that was told to me is that Deion Sanders actually did not know who Sevion Wilkerson is. He didn't know who, or was, I should say. He didn't know who Sevion Wilkerson was at the time, and he was a walk-on. So it's not as if every single player that steps onto the field is known before he's there. So the idea that Coach O could have just not known about him is not crazy. The idea that Coach O could have not met him is not crazy. He was recruited by positional coaches to come in as a walk-on, and it seemed like there was going to be a premise that it would turn into more, but in the near future, at least this season, he was going to be a walk-on who was not on scholarship. Delaware State said, we'll put you on scholarship right now. It played a part. Pretty easy decision. You get to stay home, don't have to pay for anything ever, not even a single semester. I thought that it was pretty simple. So if you want the skinny on how it happened, just a quick little breakdown on the whole story. Chris Trumbull flipped from Jackson State to Delaware State on National Signing Day. Said he wanted to stay home, be around his people. Cool. The reason there's an uproar is because Coach O said, yeah, I don't know him. Never met him. I wish him well, but he didn't have a Jackson State offer. The offer he had was to be a preferred walk-on, which does still count. You can still say that you committed by being a walk-on, but that was his offer. So now you take all of that into account. Nobody lied. There were some things that Coach O wasn't aware of, but Chris Trumbull told the truth. I'm committed to Jackson State. I'm going to Jackson State. Nobody lied in this. I think that the idea, or excuse me, because there was a lot of, it was kind of ferocious. I ain't gonna lie to you. It was strong opinions of saying, man, cut the narrative out. He lied. I want to make it clear. Chris Trumbull did not lie about being offered by Jackson State. There was a miscommunication. There were some things that Coach O was not aware of. So he put out a statement saying there was no offer. This is not something I think you really need to go back on. So there's no need to clean it up. But because that was put out in the air, fans said, oh, he was not offered. I'm telling you, I talked to people who are close to Jackson State. This is the information I got. They do not deny there was contact with him. I've seen proof of the contact. They contacted Chris Trumbull. Jackson State wanted to see what was up with Trumbull. They didn't have a scholarship to offer him at the time, so they offered him a preferred walk-on. He said, I want to do it, so he committed. That's what happened, guys. Nobody in this lied, but there was some misinformation from a lack of awareness. There's a totem pole when it comes to these things, and preferred walk-ons don't really climb the totem pole pretty high. So you got to understand, everything doesn't cross his desk. Everything does not cross Coach O's desk. So I don't really fault him for saying what he said. I don't fault anybody in this, but I do think that it's dangerous. I'd love to see what you guys say. I would love to see what you guys say about this. Some comment did get that right. Some comment, I can't remember who it was. I should go back and look for it now that I'm recording. But somebody basically said he was a preferred walk-on and they got a full ride at Delaware State. To whoever said that, pat yourself on the back, because that is facts. That's exactly how it happened. Now, as we push forward, I want to look at TSU versus Southern, because the second time around, this game is going to be way different. I don't think that it will go down the same way, and we don't walk into this game looking at it the same way either. Let's break all of that down as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is the official sports book of the NBA. And I understand that football season is over, but what about Luka with the Lakers? What about Bron with Luka? What about Anthony? Well, Anthony Davis is done for right now, but what about Anthony Edwards? What about Kyrie Irving? What about Ja Morant? There are a lot of exciting NBA players that you can put some money down. All you have to do is say, look, I think they're going to have more points than you projected. I think they're not going to have more points. You want to go to teams. And the thing about FanDuel is that it's not just before the game starts. Maybe you missed putting down your money before tip-off. That's fine, because we're in the middle of the third quarter and there's still things to put money down on. It's only up to you. It is only up to you to test your knowledge of the game. Go to FanDuel.com, and if you're new to FanDuel, you get $150 back in bonus bets if you put down a $5 bet that wins. Go to FanDuel.com to make every moment more. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On Today. We're going to be in heavy NBA mode moving forward. We're going to be talking about the biggest stories in the NBA world because football is over. Did y'all see AJ Brown's comments? Anyway, tomorrow it's Lover's Day. It's Valentine's. I think I'm going to do my episode a little bit earlier. I don't want to put my episode out at 6:30. Y'all probably getting ready to go to dinner. If you're on the East Coast, you are already probably at dinner. So I think we're going to put out Friday's episode a little bit early. I'm going to record it really early on Thursday. So I may just put that out tomorrow morning. Be on the lookout for that. So my everydayers know what to expect. But anyway, Texas Southern versus Southern women's basketball is a great example of the shift in mentality from being the hunted to being the hunter, or excuse me, from being the hunter to being the hunted. And that's exactly what Texas Southern has experienced. Because as you sit here 11 games through the season, Texas Southern is the only undefeated team in the SWAC, men or women. They, alongside Norfolk State women's basketball, are the only two undefeated HBCU basketball teams in conference play. If you look at where TSU was expected to be at the beginning of the year, they were projected to be 9th. You look at the top of the SWAC predictions. Of course, you had Grambling, who didn't perform or hasn't performed where we thought they would. But Southern, Alabama A&M, Jackson State, those are the three other teams at the top. They're actually here. It's TSU who has defeated expectations. It's TSU who's gone above and beyond. And it's TSU who has shifted from being the hunter to being the hunted, because everybody wants a piece of the Tigers now. We're getting into the place where we're playing teams for the second time now. And I don't mean we as in TSU, but let's roll with it. TSU is playing teams for the second time, and Southern is the first one of that cut, right? This game is going to be so interesting because you would assume that if Grambling fell off, it would be Southern who was the hunted. And sure, for many people they are, but TSU is one of the teams that can say that we slayed that beast. We are the ones who are hunted now. I think that one big difference is that everybody is gunning for Texas Southern. I don't know if that was the case at the beginning. You look at TSU's schedule, they played Grambling the first game, and it's the first game of conference play. It was definitely a big win, but I don't know if everybody understood. I would argue that at least 3 to 4 games in, there was no longer any underestimation. But that game against Southern, for me, should have been the turning point. Because for what you did against the Jaguars, for what you did against a team that was projected to be second in the conference, mind you, already beat first place. Now we're getting into the second place. The first time that TSU and Southern played against each other this year in the women's basketball game, Southern looked to have it all wrapped up. And that's why I will circle this game. I'm circling Southern versus Texas Southern because the first time I watched it, I feel like the Jaguars let this slip through their fingers. And as we're looking at TSU's start to the season, 11-0, only undefeated team in conference play in the SWAC. As you're looking at all of it, the one game where you look with a little bit more skeptical eye is that Southern game because you had 28 points going into the fourth quarter and you dropped a 27-point fourth quarter. That was an impact game. I would have counted them out. Nobody thinking they're gonna do anything. No, nobody is, right? Because you got to think about it this way. You going into that quarter down 15. Texas Southern hadn't scored 15 points the entirety of the game in any individual quarter. You're down 15 and you've never scored 15 in a quarter. So that means you would have to score 16 points in that quarter and hold your opponent scoreless. That felt improbable. But instead, they did something that we still didn't think they'd be able to do. TSU scored 27 points in 10 minutes. And they did that from being pretty much perfect, to be honest. They were 9 of 10 from the floor. They were 8 of 10 from the stripe. They did great thing. They played great defense, held Southern to their lowest number of points or their lowest point total in a quarter. You scored your highest point total in a quarter, and I don't think that that's been topped since, right? I would have to go through and look, but I don't think that TSU has scored 27 points in any individual quarter. Texas Southern is undefeated, and the one team you feel like they really should have lost to, they face again on Thursday. This time it's not in HBCU. This time it's not at home. You got to go out to Baton Rouge. You got to go out there to their hometown, and I can guarantee you this. Southern feels like they should have won that game. Southern feels like we let that slip through our fingers. Southern feels like there's no way that we would give up a 27-point fourth quarter ever again. And maybe they're right, but maybe it won't take that this time. That's the intrigue of this game. Because for as great as TSU has been this year, there's one game that you like, we want to see them running back. And they beat Southern. It should be a huge conversation. It already should be a conversation around TSU. But you go out and you beat the team that you kind of struggled with. Let's say you beat them how you beat pretty much everybody else, because you beat Alabama A&M by double digits, I think. Jackson State, I think, was by double digits. Let's say you do all of that. Now you're in dominating territory. So this is going to be really interesting to me because I just want to see how do you bounce back. For me, as I'm looking at Texas Southern versus Southern and I'm trying to gauge what the mindset could be on this thing, I'm looking at TSU looking as I'm stepping into this game and I want to know what the mindset is. I'm looking for Southern to try to make good on what it was really a choke job. I want Southern to try to make good on what was a choke job, and I want Texas Southern to prove that A, they won't get down that far again, and then B, that we are really the best. No, you didn't just let us come back. We were quality enough to make the comeback. So both teams are stepping into this game to prove something, but Texas Southern is in a completely different position. Because I don't know if Southern underestimated them. I don't know. I'm not going to project that. But what I will say is that now Southern knows exactly what TSU is about. That was an embarrassing loss. Now it's a team that is on an 11-game win streak. this is main event. You must see this matchup. Now, as we push forward, let's keep it down there in Houston. TSU backloaded this schedule of theirs. I don't know if I love it, to be honest. I don't know that I love how TSU is handling their schedule, but I want to go through it week by week with you as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On HBCU. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Texas Southern has backloaded their football schedule, and it makes it really interesting because I think that it is a well spaced out schedule, right? Like you go through it and you just break down the amount of games they have in between bye weeks, where the bye weeks are placed in front of what games. This is a good schedule, in my opinion. We're at the point of the offseason. Look, when you really love football the way that we, or at least me, love football, this is exciting, right? Like North Carolina Central has a great schedule. I think that is phenomenal. But TSU has a pretty good one too. A pretty good one. You look at the opening game is always going to be against Prairie View. I think I'm going to try to make it to the Labor Day Classic this year. I think I'm going to try to make it to them. But you go PV, then you travel out to Cal. You get Lamar coming to you. So you're going to have me in a home game. Then you have a bye week. So you get 3 weeks. Boom. Bye. Then you come back the week after. Mississippi Valley State, traveling there. UAPB, Grambling, traveling there. Then you get homecoming against Virginia Lynchburg. We're going to have a conversation about homecomings tomorrow, in addition to talking about why I think there may be a lot more opt-outs at the Legacy Bowl. But after homecoming, you get a bye. Then you go Alcorn. Alabama State got to travel there. Then you got to travel to Southern. Then you get to wrap up your season with Alabama A&M. The first thing that jumps off to me is the back end of the schedule, because TSU is aiming to win the SWAC West. I don't know if I have any confidence in Southern. I don't think I have any. I'm sorry. Somebody don't clip that up, because that's not actually what I mean. I don't know if I have the confidence in Southern to say that they're going to run away with it. I do feel like it's the Wild Wild West for a reason, and it just feels like anybody could go get it at any time. So I don't want to say I have no confidence in them. I just don't have blind faith in them. That's probably a better way to put it. But as you're trying to pursue a SWAC West title, you got to go against Alcorn, Alabama State, Southern, and Alabama A&M. The last month of the season when you're competitive, right? That's the key word, because we ain't been that in a minute. Now that we was purposeful. The last month of the season is always elevated pressure as you're competitive. So even if you're going against what we believe would be quote unquote easier teams, that's still high pressure, because any mistake you make right now could make or break you. But now you're going against Alcorn, who's just always gritty, competitive, right? Like that could be a tough game. Probably will be. Alabama State, same deal. We'll see if their defense is able to uphold. Southern, the defending SWAC West champions. And I know I said I don't have no confidence, but I don't have blind faith, but I think that they will be a quality team. I think they'll be a quality team again. And you have Alabama A&M, who first year under Sam Shade will be kind of difficult to predict, but at the same time, if I had to lean anyway, I like Sam Shade as a coach, and I think that he will be a really good addition to Alabama A&M. That's a tough last 4 games of your schedule. But I like the way that the schedule is set up outside of that. First off, you have 6 home games, and as I'm saying, they are going for a SWAC West title. I'm not saying that they're going to win it, but that is the mission. And I believe they had some building blocks in year 1 under Chris Dishman. Let's build on that building block by supporting. Let's build on that building block by, as a community in Houston, showing up to support the Tigers, right? I think that having a lot of home games should bring Third Ward out. I think that when you get a home field advantage, and it's going to be very difficult for TSU because that's attendance is trash. But if you can just have an exciting game, an exciting venue, man, I might try to get to one of these matchups, and hopefully it can be a victory. I need to go to one of the earlier ones. I need to go to UAPB before it gets cold, or maybe I need to go to Lamar. I'm gonna go to PV. Anyway, this isn't important. I'm doing my stinking travel agent. But yeah, 6 home games. I like that. But the biggest takeaway, and I saved it for last, save the best for last, right? Is look at the timing of these bye weeks. So your big game is PV at the beginning of the year. You have all off season prepare for that. Then you go California or Cal, Lamar. Getting Lamar to come to you was also big in my opinion. Bye week. After the bye, you go Valley, UAPB, Grambling. So now you rattle off 3 SWAC games after your bye. Like that. I like having a bye before you get 3 SWAC games. Then you go Virginia Lynchburg. Listen, I don't remember who they faced last year. It was way closer than it should have been, and that's when I was kind of out on the Tigers. But the point is, Virginia Lynchburg, come on. I ain't saying it's a bye week, but it's easy money. You brought in an easy target for homecoming. That's cool. That's what you do. But you get that week, then you get a bye week. Hopefully, if you do right, your starters get a whole half, a quarter at least to rest, and then they go into a bye week, and then you go into your biggest stretch. So those strategically placed bye weeks, they're not just, oh, throw them in here. No. And they're both after home games, too. Both after home games. So that's a big deal. But yeah, SWAC, bye week, SWAC. Bye week, 4 SWAC games to the end. Like, I love the timing of the schedule. But anyway, tomorrow's episode is going to be a little bit different. We're going to do a preview of the Legacy Bowl-ish. I just want to talk about the idea that some of these guys are going to attempt to opt out. I really do expect to see more opt-outs, especially after what happened to Davius Richard in last year's celebration or Legacy Bowl. So we're going to talk about that on tomorrow's episode. In the meantime, and remember, might be early. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear to the family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.